Hi everyone, this is Jay at iFast University doing our first live stream, or my first live stream. And today I want to talk to you about an experience I had with two students who are shadowing at iFast today from various universities around town. And I had this experience where I was trying to explain a concept that I thought was relatively simple. And the question that one of these students asked me was, a lot of people get injured when they're running, and why is that? And is it something like their bones and muscles aren't strong enough to sustain the running? And she had read something about, strength training would be good for runners, and she was asking me if that was true. So I don't know how to answer questions like this because they're so vague and they're very much prompted by I read something on the internet. Is this true? And I can't even begin to answer that question sometimes because there are so many pieces missing from the amount of information that I need to answer this question. So I answered it as best I could, saying, a lot of people get injured because they're sedentary or they're trying to lose weight, and if they're 30, 40 pounds overweight, then maybe they're running and they're pounding their joints constantly, and running is a very non-variable activity, right? You're pounding your joints in a specific motion and repeating it thousands and thousands of times. So it's not that running is bad, and it's not that strength training itself is going to fix everything. It's more complicated than that. Maybe they need to build up some tissue tolerance. Maybe they need to do some basic strength training. Maybe they need to lose some weight before they can run safely. So I was explaining all this, and the concept that I really wanted to get to was the concept of variability, right? Running is very sagittal plane for most people. A lot of people run on treadmills. A lot of people run in straight lines. And if your movement is a little bit off, then that's going to be amplified by this invariant activity. And so a lot of these injuries are going to be, say, something like repetitive stress or repetitive strain injuries. So that was the main point that I wanted to get to for this student. And so I explained myself, and she wrote everything down in her notebook, and kind of half jokingly, half playfully, I said, okay, you're going to explain that back to me in about 30 minutes. And I was busy coaching clients on the floor, and so I didn't really have time to listen to her explanation for about an hour. So an hour later, I'm asking her to explain this back to me, and she kind of hits some of these pieces, and I had specifically even told her that you can copy some of the examples and analogies that I gave, because I gave examples of, why does a tennis player's dominant arm get really thick at the forearm while their non-playing arm remains normal sized? And it's because, the constant pounding on that forearm as it's hitting the tennis ball over and over and over again causes the arm to get thicker in response to that stress, right? And so we were talking about how you want to build up people's tolerance and allow their bodies to adapt to these stimuli so that they can maybe run one day safely. Anyway, I had given her a whole bunch of these examples. I had stolen an example from Bill where he talks about, if you scratch your hand here and then you scratch it here and then you scratch it here, that's like nothing is a problem. But if you scratch it in one place over and over and over and over again, pretty soon you're going to draw blood. And that's an example of talking about variability and how you want to restore some variability to the system. So after having covered all these topics with her, I'm giving her an opportunity to explain back to me what she understood from the conversation. And what happened was she got like parts of it, but not the whole picture. And she certainly didn't really understand that the main point I wanted to get to was this discussion of variability and why engaging in invariant activities can be a problem for some people, and why restoring some variability to people's movement can be helpful to them. So we talked about it again, and I emphasized that that was my main point, and that she eventually got it, and she was able to explain it back to me. And this whole experience for me encapsulates two concepts that I want to talk about, which is the curse of knowledge and the perception of comprehension. So the curse of knowledge, I think, is something that some people struggle with more than others, and it basically is something that experts struggle with because they know the subject matter so well, and they forget what non-experts or beginners don't know. And so I don't consider myself an expert on any of this stuff, but even then, when I'm talking to a undergraduate student in exercise science, and I'm talking about some of these concepts, it's easy for me to forget sometimes what they know and don't know, and what they might understand and what they might not understand. Because to me, the way that I explained it was very straightforward. I had heard these explanations many, many times from Bill and from other people. And so I thought that my explanation was exquisitely clear and concise. And I'm joking there, but I thought I had done a pretty good job of explaining it. When I gave this student the chance to explain it back to me, it gave me a chance to see what I had missed, maybe, in terms of I should have emphasized very, very clearly or more clearly that variability was the big concept that I wanted her to understand. And that all the other examples and all the other pieces of discussion were kind of icing on the cake. So I didn't do that, and I could see that from the way that she struggled to explain it back to me. And the second concept I want to talk about is the perception of comprehension. So I have no doubt that when she listened to my explanation the first time and wrote down notes in her notebook, that she was pretty confident that she understood everything that came out of my mouth. So by giving her an opportunity to play it back to me in her own words, it exposed very, very quickly what she didn't understand and how much she struggled to put together some of the concepts in her head. Because there is a huge difference between understanding and between say recognition and recall. And so she was able to recognize some of the concepts that I was talking about, and she's intelligent, she can understand them, but she didn't have enough command of the material to be able to teach it to someone else. So this is something that we do a lot at iFast is we teach concepts and then we give the interns time to marinate on it for about 10 minutes or 30 minutes or maybe 30 seconds. And then I often ask them to teach it back to me. And I think if you do this with your own self, then you'll be amazed at how difficult it is to do this with some topics that you might think are really basic when you listen to them because you think you've understood them. And this is an experience that I've had with myself when I'm listening to Bill talk about joint mechanics or anatomy or whatever it is, and I write things down in my notebook and I think, great, I have understood this really awesome new concept. And then the next day when I go to explain it to an intern or a fellow coach, and I say, hey, Bill taught me this really cool thing, let me explain it to you. And then I realize exactly what I'm struggling with. So in order to combat this for yourself, whenever you watch an iFast University video or read an article, it might be a good idea to put it aside, don't look at your notes, and summarize it in your own words. You know, teach it to a friend or teach it to a colleague or teach it to your girlfriend or boyfriend or spouse who's not interested in exercise science or coaching. And if you can explain it to them in a way that's moderately interesting and totally understandable, then you know that you're pretty close to grasping the concept at a pretty high level. So I hope that helps for you guys. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you again tomorrow.